You are staring at a piece of cheap particle board furniture that took you 4 hours to assemble. Your back aches from twisting a tiny metal hex wrench. The left drawer sticks slightly whenever you pull it open, and the top surface has a noticeable scratch near the back corner. Yet, you feel a strange surge of immense pride. Why does this imperfect object feel so incredibly valuable? You tell yourself that you appreciate the design. You tell yourself that it fits your room perfectly. But the real answer is far stranger, and it exposes a fundamental flaw in human psychology. You do not love the furniture because it is good. You love the furniture because you suffered for it. Why does your brain equate pain with value? Your mind naturally assumes that your preferences drive your actions. You believe that you see something beautiful, recognize its worth, and then decide to work hard to acquire it. Behavioral economics reveals that the exact opposite is frequently true. Your actions routinely rewrite your preferences. You work hard for something first, and then your brain invents a story to convince you that it was worth the agony. How often do you fall for this illusion? In 2012, researchers Michael Norton, Daniel Moshon, and Dan Ariely decided to test this strange quirk of human nature. They gathered a group of ordinary participants and split them into 2 separate teams. The first team was handed pre-assembled IKEA storage boxes and told to inspect them. The second team was given the exact same boxes, but in flat pack form, with instructions to build them from scratch. Both groups were then asked how much they would be willing to pay to take the boxes home. What do you think happened? The builders offered significantly more money than the mere observers. They looked at the exact same plastic and compressed wood, but their perception of reality had been altered by their own sweat. The researchers named this phenomenon the IKEA Effect. It is a cognitive bias where consumers place a disproportionately high value on products they partially created. But the experiment did not stop there. The researchers raised the stakes. Would this illusion hold true for actual art? They handed participants origami paper and instructions to fold a paper crane. Most of the participants were complete novices, and their resulting creations were predictably ugly, crumpled, and lopsided. The researchers then asked the builders to bid on their own creations, while also asking independent outsiders to bid on them. The outsiders saw the cranes for what they truly were, which was cheap, ruined paper worth essentially nothing. The builders, however, valued their own crumpled creations almost as much as professional origami art. They genuinely believed that their labor had infused the paper with real, objective value. Why are we so blind to our own mediocrity? To understand this blindness, you have to look backward into your deep evolutionary history. Your ancestors did not live in a world of effortless abundance. Food required tracking wild animals across dangerous terrain for days at a time. Shelter required hauling heavy stones and chopping down massive trees with primitive tools. Clean water required digging deep into the earth or traveling miles to a hidden river. In that harsh environment, a simple equation became hardwired into your cognitive architecture. High effort equaled high survival payoff. Things that were easy to obtain were usually plentiful, low in nutrients, or completely worthless. Things that required immense energy, risk, and suffering were almost always vital for your survival. Your brain learned to release dopamine not just when you received a final reward, but in direct proportion to how hard you had to fight to get it. The struggle itself became a psychological signal of quality. Are you still running on that ancient operating system? You are, and modern society knows it. This evolutionary survival mechanism has transformed into a psychological vulnerability called the effort heuristic. In 2004, psychologists Justin Kruger, Derek Wertz, Van Boven, and William Altermatt designed an elegant experiment to isolate this exact bias. They presented 2 groups of people with the exact same poem. The poem was a brief, simple piece of literature. The researchers told the first group that the author spent 4 hours writing it. They told the second group that the author spent 14 hours writing it. How did this single detail change their perception? The results were stark and undeniable. The participants who believed the poem took 14 hours rated it as significantly higher in quality. They expressed greater personal enjoyment, praised the author's hidden depth, and calculated a much higher monetary value for the piece. The text on the page had not changed by a single syllable. The only variable was the perceived suffering of the creator. Your brain uses effort as a shortcut for quality because evaluating actual quality is incredibly difficult. Is it easier to judge the beauty of art or the hours spent painting it? This shortcut leaves you deeply exposed to manipulation. Corporations discovered this secret decades ago, and they have been using it to quietly engineer your buying habits ever since. Consider the history of the instant cake mix in the United States during the 1950s. A company called General Mills hired food scientists to create a revolutionary product under the Betty Crocker brand. They created a powdered mix that required the consumer to do only one thing. You just added water, stirred, and placed it in the oven. It was efficient, fast, and tasted identical to a cake made from scratch. Yet, the product completely failed on the shelves. Why would busy homemakers reject total convenience? The executives were completely baffled by the lack of sales. They brought in a psychological consultant named Ernest Dichter, who pioneered the field of motivational research. Dichter interviewed consumers and discovered a fascinating emotional barrier. The process was simply too easy. Because the homemakers did not have to put in any meaningful effort, they felt like cheats. They felt that they could not rightfully claim ownership of the final dessert. When they served the cake to their families, they felt a deep sense of guilt instead of pride. How did the company solve this psychological crisis? They changed the formula to make it intentionally harder. They removed the dried egg powder from the mix. Now, when you bought the box, you had to measure out and crack a fresh egg into the bowl yourself. The physical taste of the cake did not improve. The time required actually increased, but sales exploded almost overnight. By forcing the consumer to perform an act of physical labor, the company gave them permission to feel proud. The simple act of cracking an egg transformed the cake from a corporate commodity into a personal achievement. You want to feel like a creator, even if you are just following instructions. This corporate weaponization of effort extends far beyond the grocery store aisle. Think about the modern software industry. When you use a tax software program, you often see an animated loading screen. The screen flashes messages like scanning thousands of deductions, verifying state laws, and calculating maximum return. Computer scientists know that the software actually calculates your taxes in a fraction of a millisecond. The algorithm finishes its work almost the instant you press submit. Why do companies force you to wait for a fake progress bar? They do it because of the labor illusion. If the software gave you the answer instantly, you would feel cheated. You would wonder why you just paid $50 for something that took zero effort. By introducing an intentional artificial delay, the company simulates hard work on your behalf. You watch the loading bar creep across the screen, and you feel satisfied. You convince yourself that the software is sweating for you. Do you value the answer, or do you value the performance of effort? This psychological trap does not just govern your relationship with products and software. It scales outward to control the most powerful institutions in modern society. Look closely at the structure of elite universities, elite military units, and exclusive corporate cultures. Consider the brutal, grueling process of medical residency for young doctors. New medical graduates routinely work 80 hours per week on minimal sleep. They perform complex procedures while utterly exhausted. Study after study shows that sleep deprivation increases medical errors and endangers patient lives. Why does the medical establishment fiercely defend this dangerous system? They defend it because of a phenomenon known as effort justification. When a human being undergoes severe psychological or physical trauma to achieve a goal, they cannot allow themselves to believe the goal is trivial. To do so would cause intense cognitive dissonance, which is the agonizing psychological tension of holding two contradictory beliefs. Your brain cannot handle the phrase, "I suffered immensely for something that is completely pointless." To escape that mental torment, your brain automatically changes its valuation of the goal. The goal becomes sacred. Is this why hazing rituals are so incredibly difficult to eradicate? It is the exact reason. In 1959, psychologists Elliot Aronson and Judson Mills conducted a landmark study on the severity of initiation. They invited college women to join a premier discussion group on the psychology of sex. Before joining, the women were divided into different initiation categories. One group entered with no initiation at all. The second group underwent a mild initiation. The third group underwent a severe, deeply embarrassing, and stressful initiation ritual. After the initiation, all the women listened to the exact same group discussion over headphones. The discussion was intentionally designed by the researchers to be an absolute nightmare of boredom. The speakers stuttered, droned on about irrelevant biological terms, and acted completely uninteresting. How did the different groups rate the experience? The women who entered easily saw the truth clearly. They rated the discussion as dull, useless, and a complete waste of their valuable time. But the women who underwent the severe initiation reacted in a completely opposite manner. They rated the exact same boring discussion as deeply fascinating, highly intelligent, and incredibly sophisticated. They praised the speakers and expressed deep excitement for future meetings. Their pain had completely blinded them to reality. They could not admit that they had suffered just to listen to nonsense. This exact same toxic architecture quietly governs your most intimate personal relationships. You have likely experienced the agonizing pull of the hard-to-get dynamic. When someone ignores your text messages for days, your attraction to them often spikes. When someone is emotionally distant, you analyze their every word. You reread old conversations and obsess over their hidden meanings. Meanwhile, the kind, stable person who answers your messages instantly feels boring. You label them as nice but lack chemistry. Why do you mistake emotional neglect for romantic excitement? You mistake it because you are confusing the effort heuristic with actual connection. When a person is available and kind, the emotional cost of acquiring their affection is zero. Because the effort is zero, your brain subconsciously calculates that their value must also be zero. But when a person pulls away, they introduce a massive barrier. You have to invest enormous emotional energy, hours of anxiety, and sleepless nights just to win a single smile. When they finally grant you a crumb of validation, your brain floods your system with dopamine. You mistake that relief for love. Are you chasing the person, or are you just chasing the return on your investment? This is the dark trap of human psychology. You are trapped in a loop where the price of admission dictates the beauty of the show. You see this in the luxury fashion industry, where brands intentionally burn excess inventory to keep prices artificially high and items difficult to find. You see this in housing markets, where the difficulty of a mortgage makes an average house feel like a palace. You see this in your daily schedule, where being constantly busy makes you feel important, even when you are completely unproductive. You have built a world where you measure the quality of your life by the size of your scars. When will you stop confusing the climb with the mountain? Tonight, when you look at that lopsided piece of particle board furniture, you might see something completely new. You will see the sticking drawer and the scratch on the top surface. you will remember the 4 hours of frustration and the ache in your lower back. But this time, you will recognize the illusion for what it truly is. The furniture is not special. Your suffering did not magically transform the wood. You are simply looking at a monument to your own stubborn labor. And for the first time in your life, you might finally realize that harder to get always feels better, even when it isn't.